What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today I just wanted to actually just talk about a few things. One being that Netflix somehow paid Rockstar a lot of money to be able to broadcast GTA 6 on their platform. I mean, they must have paid a boatload of money. Nevertheless, I'm not too worried about it. I trust the internet will have it out within the hour. And also, who doesn't have family members who have Netflix, or a friend who has Netflix that you can borrow the account from, right? So really, there's no reason to fret over it. People really been getting butthurt over that, and I find it not to be a problem. Or just be patient and just wait till 9 p.m. Eastern, right? It'll be on YouTube. So that's how I feel about the extended look. I do not know what they're going to be presenting. You know, it could be gameplay trailer. It could be the third cinematic trailer that everybody's been expecting. But hey, it could be gameplay. I'm hoping for a documentary, behind the scenes look at what Rockstar has been up to. Not giving away their secrets per se, but just one-on-one with the developers, their time at Rockstar, what they've experienced working on the game. Snippets of behind the scenes of them making an animation, etc. Stuff like that I find very interesting, and that's what I'm wanting to see, but I highly, highly doubt that. What I'm really here for today is I was reading through a couple of the patents, and I know these have been broken down by many YouTubers to an extent, to dramatic detail, but I kind of wanted to go over one of my favorite ones, and so what I find, which one in particular that I think is way more important than people realize, is the system and method for gaming object environment generation. I think that one is just going to be really important to focus on. I get that there's one for animation, the locomotion for animation, and we'll touch on that one in another video, but this one is really important because it gives us that vast variety, right, of environments, etc., like that. So now, before we go any further, I just want to make something very clear that this patent does not say that this is going to be in GTA 6. Okay, I'm not saying that. That's not how patents work. But what this does tell us is that Take-Two has developed and protected a system for building extremely large, varied game worlds, right? And because we're looking at GTA 6, the interesting part is figuring out what technology like this could actually look like inside of a Rockstar open world game. And once you strip away all the technical language, you know, this thing is actually pretty simple to understand. The basic idea of this patent is like, so instead of Rockstar having to manually create every NPC, every outfit, every apartment, every combination of objects individually, they can create a giant collection of pieces and give those pieces information about what they are, and then let the game intelligently put them together. Like that already in itself is amazing. And I know it sounds simple, but on the scale of what they're describing is pretty crazy, right? Like the scale of Rockstar or the GTA 6. So the patent uses like world metadata constantly. And don't let that word make it sound more complicated than it is. Think of metadata like a label stuck onto everything in the game, right? So let's say that Rockstar creates like a pair of jeans, right? The actual 3D model of the jeans. But attached to those jeans could basically be invisible tags, labels, if you will, saying like casual, male, worn, cheap, blue, ambient, NPC, etc. Right? Those labels aren't necessarily things that we will ever see as players. They're information the game can use behind the scenes, right? That we won't see. So the patent specifically talks about assets being tagged with descriptions like young, old, casual, business, formal, luxury, sport, new, worn, etc. like that. So things that are like old and rugged will look old and rugged, and they'll belong in that area, right? It also describes using these tags when deciding on what type of character it belongs to, right? A particular environment. Like an easy example to say is like the head is young, shirt is casual, pants are worn, and shoes are cheap, and the area is going to be beach, right? Kind of like describing a beach bum. And they're only put that specific NPC in the beach area, not just over in Ambrosia or somewhere in the mountains. Let's say that there was an environment of snow. You're not going to see someone in a short sleeve, shorts, and flip-flops, right? GTA 5, you probably would have, right? So the game doesn't necessarily need Rockstar to save this guy as NPC number 8,462. Instead, the system can basically say, hey, I need a casual character in this area particularly, right? And then it starts picking compatible pieces: head, body, shirt, pants, shoes, textures, accessories, etc. And because can be multiple choices for every piece, you can make massive numbers of different looking people using a much smaller collection of individual assets, right? And the patent usually describes people as being assembled from interchangeable components, and explains how tags can be used to select models and textures. You know, this is where I think things get interesting for GTA 6. Think about GTA 5. You eventually start recognizing NPCs. You see the same dude walking around again over and over. You see the same clothes, the same faces, the same combinations. That's always going to happen eventually. I'm not saying it won't, because the game has only so many assets, right? Like Rockstar can make only so many necklaces, so many shirts. But in GTA 6, they're going to have a vast majority of them. They're going to be different because this isn't, GTA 5 console. PS3, 4, and 5. I think it was only 4. No, it was 3 and 4, right? I can't remember. I think it was 3. It's been a long time. Been a PC player ever since 2016, I think, or 2015. So I kind of forgot. Right? PC's always better. If you're gonna save it for a console, save it for a PC. It'll save you in the long run. It's an investment. Same faces, same combinations, right? We're always gonna see that, right? Because they only have so many assets. But in this system, gives Rockstar way to multiply the amount of perceived variety without literally creating tens of thousands complete NPC models, right? So think about it mathematically, right? Let's say you have 20 heads, 20 shirts, 20 pairs of pants, 10 pairs of shoes, 10 hairstyles. Mathematically, that's already 800,000 possible combinations before we even start changing colors, textures, accessories, body types, or anything else. And this patent goes even further than just randomly smashing pieces together, because pure randomness would look absolutely stupid. You don't want somebody walking around with a winter coat, swim trunks, cowboy hats, boots, unless there's actually a reason for it. Okay, example. Back to the biodome, right? You don't want somebody in flip-flops out in the snow. All right, so the patent has rules, okay? This is probably like one of the most important things to understand. The game isn't just rolling the dice, right? The assets can have restrictions and relationships. The patent actually gives a really good example of involving clothing, okay? If a character has a large beard, right, the game tries to put a scarf on them. The beard and scarf could physically clip through each other. So instead of just allowing a broken combination, the system, the patent, can find a compatible smaller beard or remove the visible beard geometry, right? And the patent even describes like systems where equipping one object can automatically add, remove, or replace another object. One example is a lifeguard shirt, automatically adding like a whistle, right? So think about creating a character in game. Normally you pick the shirt, the pants, the shoes, but imagine the game itself creating thousands of those people, right? It needs rules telling it, if you use this shirt, like, right, don't use this jacket. So if you use this hat, only use these certain types of hairstyles with it that fit underneath it, because it doesn't want any clipping. Okay, if this person is a lifeguard, give them the accessories to make more sense for being a lifeguard. I think that's really, really amazing, and I don't think people are actually thinking about how in depth and what Rockstar has accomplished with this in this open world environment, right? If they're wealthy, don't give them destroyed clothes unless there's a reason. That's basically what the system is doing. It's controlled randomness, right? So controlled randomness is a huge deal for a game like GTA. Okay, now here's where this goes beyond just making random NPCs. The patent also describes something called world and population system. It specifically talks about controlling and distribution of characters and assets by zone, right? An example in the patent literally describes a system being able to request certain types of characters for certain zones. Again, back to the flip-flops in the snowy area. You don't want to see it. That's huge for a game like GTA because different areas shouldn't feel like somebody just hit the same NPC spawn button 15,000 times, right? Say I'm standing in a crowded tourist beach area, right? And the game could request more assets with tags relating to swimwear, tourists, casual clothing, young adults, lifeguards, beach accessories. Now, like if you drive 20 minutes away into a poor rural community, the population system can request a completely different combination of assets. Older vehicles, different hairstyles, different body types, different levels of clothing wear. I mean, the list can go on, you know? And that's the important part. Is that Rockstar doesn't necessarily have to individually script every person standing on the street. The area can tell the system what kind of population belongs here, right? Like that has the potential to make different neighborhoods actually feel different. Communities, instead of the same NPC pool, moved around the map like you see in GTA 5. And then not only that, the patent also talks about, then there's like the law system, right? And this part caught my attention immediately because those of you who know me, I am in law enforcement. I am an active police officer. And that's also why pumping out videos all the time can be kind of difficult for me. And also I need a break mentally, physically. So sometimes I do game on the side to relieve that stress. And I think like, I don't want to record this as much as I want to. And I'm so thankful for my 4,800 subscribers. Like I really am thankful, and I'm not taking that for granted and just leaving you on the wind. It's just things have been just a little difficult. This is not a full-time job. I wish it was, but it's not, right? I have a family. So the patent just doesn't mention population and generation, right? It specifically identifies different environment systems that can communicate with the asset system. Those include an animal flocking system, a world population system, and something literally called the law system. And the patent says the law system can generate law enforcement character assets in response to the player or other characters committing the crime. So that's interesting. So right there, so not only can law enforcement respond to us committing crimes, but it says other characters committing crimes, right? Now again, that does not mean I can sit here and say that GTA 6's new police system has been confirmed. Okay, it hasn't, but it's definitely worth talking about. And again, we've seen through the trailers and the 2022 leaks that the AI in the law enforcement responsive is going to be, we've seen it dialed back, right? Like they're not just shooting you. Like they're doing tactical stuff. They're taking their time approaching you. They're not just immediately going gun blazing and just killing you just because you punched an old lady at the diner. We've seen that in the Hank's Waffle leaks. So it's really, really cool. Haven't seen them. I'd go check them out. Can't put it on screen though. So let's just say, for an example, that like Jason robs a gas station. So instead of the game saying like player has 2 stars, spawn a police car, right? You could potentially have multiple systems communicating. The game knows a crime occurred, where the crime occurred, and what type of area that you were in, what law enforcement assets belong in that area, jurisdictions, right? I think that's pretty cool. And then the law system can request the appropriate assets. So hypothetically, one area might primarily generate city police and another might generate the sheriff's deputy. We kind of see that already in GTA 5. You do something in Sandy Shores, the sheriff's department shows up. You do something in the city shows up, right? So we kind of already see that. But I think that's really cool because we can go off of what, Red Dead Redemption 2 is like now, right? You commit a crime in Valentine and you go over to Blackwater, you're not going to have police officers chasing you, right? I think that's pretty cool to think about. But also, again, that was back in the day. Communications, you could just pick up the radio and let the neighboring county know that you're looking for a bolo, right? So I don't think that's going to happen, but you never know, right? Like they could divide that just for player reasons, so it doesn't ruin everybody's fun going to the next town, etc. But, they're aiming for realism. You're going to be boloed, right? You hop over to Ambrosia, you're boloed. They're looking for your car. They already notified the neighboring police department. That's how it would be in real life, at least. That's what we do. So I thought that was cool. Again, I'm only using those as examples. I'm not saying the patent confirms those exact agencies and what they're going to do, right? The important thing is the architecture behind the patents, right? The law system is capable of saying, I need law enforcement characters because something happened in the world, right? And then the asset system determines like what compatible characters and equipment to load, right? And that's a lot more sophisticated than thinking about wanted levels as simply 1 star equals this cop, 2 stars equals this cop. The patent describes like a system where the game world itself can make requests based on what's happening around it. Like animals work the same way. There's also like an animal flocking system. And when people hear flocking and probably think birds, but flocking in games is basically like group behavior, birds, fish, animals moving together, etc. Potentially groups responding to each other and their environment. So the patent says that this system could control the generation of animals and their group behavior while requesting the animal assets it needs from the same underlying asset system. All right, so the same concept applies. World says, I need this animal here. And the asset system says, okay, which animal are valid here? Which models? Which variations? Which ones are already preloaded? And then the game builds on that scene. And that helps explain how you can potentially populate a massive world without Rockstar having to place every single living thing. Now we can move on to like the crazier parts, which I'm excited about as well, because you've been in a lot of interiors in Rockstar's games, such as, Red Dead Redemption 2. There's a lot of vast open interiors, but also there was very few interiors versus GTA 5, right? I mean, there's no question. RDR 2 didn't have a house on every freaking corner like GTA 5, so it was probably impossible during that time with the limitations they had from console. So same thing goes for the interiors with the NPC, right? Because this is probably the section people are going to run into the most because of interiors and buildings, right? Because the patent specifically talks about procedurally generating building interiors. Okay, it doesn't just casually mention it, right? It explains how it could work. The idea that Rockstar can build a relatively small collection of interchangeable pieces: floors, ceilings, walls, tables, beds, etc., lamps. And the list can go on of what an interior piece is. Go in your living room and count every asset. Every piece that makes up your living room is basically the asset that Rockstar would have to make, right? So different levels of wear. Some people have a shitty couch, some people have luxury couches, etc. So I think that's pretty cool. And then the system can create many different interiors based on those pieces. So for like an apartment, small apartment, let's say Rockstar makes one apartment floor plan. Apartment A and apartment B basically or physically have the same layout, right? And then that happens constantly in real life. Like if you live in an apartment complex, that your neighbor's house has the same layout, but everything's different, right? So when you walk into the same apartment complex, the units are mostly identical, but people living inside of them don't own the identical furniture. So like Rockstar could create the base layout once. Then apartment A might get a cheap couch, small television. worn carpet, basic bed. But apartment B could get a luxury couch, huge television, flat screen, right, hang on the wall, and high-end furniture. Same basic apartment, though, just completely different feeling when you walk into it. That example is extremely close to what this patent itself describes. It specifically discusses multiple apartments using essentially the same floor plan while varying furniture, fixtures, colors, and levels of wear. But, again, just like the NPCs, these also have rules. And once again, it's not pure randomness. Patent also describes rules where objects aren't allowed to exist. For example, a rug can go on the floor. A table can go on the rug. A lamp can go on that table. Okay? But the game shouldn't randomly put a lamp on a chair. Like, it has rules. I think it's awesome. Just the technology behind what they're putting into this game is just really, really well thought out. And I think that everybody's going to be in for a treat. All right. So it's basically like a family tree for objects when you think about it, right? The lamp knows it belongs on the table. The table knows it can go on the floor or rug. The rug knows it belongs on the floor. So when the game generates a room, it isn't just throwing furniture around randomly. It has rules. It sees what combinations it's allowed to make if it makes sense. The patent gives us an example of high-end apartments and containing kitchens, cupboard boards, cereal boxes, fruit bowls, television, couches, cushions, etc. like that. I think that's really awesome. And that's why I think describing this simply as procedural generation doesn't really just do it justice. It's more like procedural assembly with rules, right? This does not confirm every building is iterable, and this is where I would like to immediately shut down one of those theories. I know it's going to come from that, right? From this patent, people are going to immediately assume that every building is iterable. Not every building is going to be iterable just because this patent makes it easier for Rockstar. It takes the load off of them and enables us to have more interiors to go into, but not every building is going to be iterable. And maybe every building could be iterable, but not every floor, not every bedroom, not every hotel room, right? Let's say every first ground floor would be iterable. Don't expect to go any higher than that. Not everybody's going to keep their door unlocked. So, got to use a little realism here, right? So, it does not confirm that every building is going to be iterable, okay? That doesn't say that 70% or 50%, right? It doesn't give us a number at all. It just gives us what they're doing. The patent just tells us what they're up to, right? And it's a very important distinction because there's still a massive difference between we have the technology capable of creating varied interiors and the player can walk inside every building, right? Very big difference. But if Rockstar wanted GTA 6 to have significantly more interiors than GTA 5, this is exactly the type of technology that would make that goal much more practical. There's an important part of this patent that I think that people are going to look over. The system isn't going to only design to create a variety. It's also designed around performance. And the patent describes the game favoring textures and assets that are already loaded into memory. When a scene becomes expensive to render, it can actually adjust that balance depending on what's happening. I think that's pretty cool too. You're standing on a street packed full of people. You got like 50 pedestrians, 20 cars, storefronts, signs, reflections, lighting, traffic, all that stuff. Animation's going crazy, right? It's live. It's alive, right? And the game is under a heavier load. So instead of saying, I absolutely need every single NPC here to use a completely different collection of textures, the system can reuse more assets that are already loaded and still get a variation. Like, that's amazing. And then, but the game doesn't waste performance constantly loading new things. Now, drive all the way out into the middle of nowhere, right? Where there's one truck, 4 people, some animals, buildings, whatever, right? And suddenly the game has a lot more resources available to it. So now the system can afford to increase the variations. And the patent actually gives us essentially this scenario. A busy scripted street could require tighter asset restrictions because of the memory cost, whereas a wilderness scene could afford more variation. And that's why Red Dead Redemption probably looked as good as it did and performed as good as it did. I think it did amazing. It sucks to be limited to 60 frames or even 30 frames on console, but on PC, pushing 140 plus is just, it's just, the eyes know what it's looking at. I mean, like, you can't, the frames matter. And I don't know what they're going to be on PlayStation Pro. It may be stuck at 30, could be a 60. We don't know. Could be a hard 40. That's incredibly important for GTA 6 because Rockstar is trying to make something that looks incredibly detailed while still running on a console with finite memory and processing power, right? When you put everything together, this patent isn't really describing one cool feature. It's describing an infrastructure, and that infrastructure is what lets Rockstar scale everything else. More NPCs, more believable neighborhoods, different population depending on location, procedurally varied interiors, clothing that doesn't clip through itself, animals generated appropriately for the world, law enforcement system capable of requesting law enforcement assets, objects that understand what other objects they are compatible with. The system designed to balance variety against performance, and that's why out of all these patents, this one is the one I was looking at the closest. Because the biggest jump between GTA 5 and GTA 6 might not just be the graphics. It could be how much more dynamic the world is underneath the graphics. GTA 5 can look like a city. The real challenge for GTA 6 is making it feel like the city exists, whether we're paying attention to it or not. The technology like this is one possible piece of how Rockstar could accomplish that. So no, this patent doesn't prove that GTA 6 has unlimited PCs. It doesn't prove that every interior will be interactive. It doesn't prove the exact wanted system. But what it does prove is that Take-Two Interactive has developed a system around generating a huge amounts of believable variations from reusable game assets while still controlling what makes sense and what the hardware can handle. And when you're talking about a game the size of GTA 6, man, that's much bigger. That's a much bigger deal than it might sound on paper. And because of this technology is being used heavily in GTA 6, I think it is. We're not just talking about a prettier GTA 5. Okay. We're talking about an open world that has tools to be significantly more varied, context aware, and believable. And that's where this patent gets really interesting. So guys, I appreciate you sticking around. If you stuck around to the end of the video, I think that patent is really interesting. We're going to go over the other ones, the animation locomotive, probably another day. But I just really was just reading through those, and I just thought that one was the most interesting one on how it can play on just that imagination of playthrough, right? Just give you that immersive feeling. So, till next time, take it easy.